Captain Jock Lowe, you're here with us at Runways UK. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, you are the man behind the Heathrow scheme that Davis didn't recommend. Is that a big disappointment to you?
Yes, in part, of course, but then there are a number of caveats I would give and a number of contradictions in the report, which means I don't think it's over yet.
Right.
And I would remind you that we are not a third runway, we're just a longer runway.
So, I mean, as far as I hear, all of the contenders that are in the or in the report that that Davis has been looking at can still consider themselves to be still in the running.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the whole process is flawed in some way?
Well, the best way of describing it is we're half time.
Right.
And Heathrow Airport's 1-0 up.
Right.
Gatwick has probably been sent off the field. Right. So we need to validate some of the things that they did in the commission. I mean, for instance, they said 700,000 movements, which is what we did all our planning on, and then allowed Heathrow to give 740,000 movements. Well, we could do 740,000 movements too.
Right.
So one of the reasons given for choosing the Heathrow scheme was their economic benefit, simply because they didn't play by the rules and put in an extra 40,000 slots.
So what do you do now then? Are you back to the drawing board? Is there a discussion forum that's available
so
for you?
the DFT now has to do the appraisal, has to take all the data, but also add in all the political considerations, which in a way Davis didn't have to. He had to look at a fact-based decision. So, as I say, there's one or two elements of the Davis report which are perhaps an exaggeration of what we think the position is. So we will give our data and our position to the DFT, who will then recommend to ministers and who will then... But the big decisions are, yes, a runway, and yes, it should be Heathrow.
So the fact that they've recommended Heathrow really plays into your hand. Do you look at the, I suppose, the mitigation that Davis has insisted that Heathrow Airport actually brings in? So no night flights or no flights before 6 o'clock. Are those kind of, are they deliverable? Are those mitigation levels?
Those are the things that I put in the first place. I mean, they've borrowed my watch and told everybody the time. So no, get rid of night quota flights is fairly simple. Some of the approach techniques and some of the work that can be done on aeroplanes should go ahead. And remember that by the time we get into the 2030, there'll be newer aeroplanes around. Have you ever seen a streamlined undercarriage, for instance? That's what makes half the noise.
But the reality is, though, what we're looking at then is, 30% increase in capacity in 10 years' time. Is this really a big enough prize to go through such a lot of discussion?
I think so. You've got to bear in mind, there's only 4 million of us, 65 million. There's only so many journeys that we want to make. There's only so many visitors we can take, and we're stuck on the northwest corner of Europe. You don't go through it to go anywhere, so we don't want to be a hub like Dubai or Istanbul. We want the people that we want to come here from overseas, and make it easy for UK residents to go overseas. So the extra 200,000 slots or so will probably be enough into the foreseeable future. If you need to have more, you've got bigger aeroplanes, which would be by this time blended wing, engines hidden in the top of the wing, laminar flow, or, and I'm not going to push it because we might not ever need it, but we could do a fourth runway if you really had to in 50, 60, 70 years' time.
So do you think, I suppose finally, we're starting this whole process of discussion, trying, I suppose, to move from a recommendation towards a decision. We heard this morning from Heathrow, John Holland-Kay saying 2020 first spade in the ground. I mean, is that realistic?
Well, it's more than realistic. I think if you got all the planning permissions and so on sorted out in this Parliament, which is easily achievable, you could start doing it. Remember, we did a runway extension at Southend. It took 6 months. I don't know why it takes so long. We could be up and operating with a runway and the new motorway bypassed very quickly, a couple of years from starting, so we could be well ahead of the other options.
So whether or not it's your option or whether it's the Heathrow Airport option, the fact that it's at Heathrow for you is a step forward.
Oh, indeed. It's the only, having been in this business and looked at up and down and sideways for many, many years, it's the only it's the only reasonable, sensible option to take. I mean, Heathrow is a hub of transport for the UK. That's what it's about. It's not about London, it's not about being a hub for the world. This is about a UK transport hub, and that's what Heathrow is.
Great, well thanks for joining us here today. Thanks for your thoughts on it, and we look forward to keeping tabs on Heathrow Hub and where that goes. Thanks,
Okay.
Jock.